Thank you for joining me. My name is Stephanie Ray, and we have a study to share with you. But first, I want to just share a little bit about myself and my background in traditional Chinese medicine and biochemistry. I'm also currently working on and will have my doctorate in naturopathy in February of 2017. So we approached this study from many different angles, and one of them being, how do we naturally detoxify children without creating a healing crisis? It's something that we've been doing clinically for a number of years, about 26 years, and I wanted to see if we could do this with a group of individuals that were very sensitive to detoxification and may or may not have some issues in regard to things like their detoxification and elimination pathways. How were they with dealing with stress? These were some of the issues that we wanted to tackle. Some of the work we've done with Generation Rescue has led us to inquire into this realm, because we do sponsor a group of kids of maybe anywhere from 22 to 35 kids in any given round, and we've helped over 800 kids now in this grant program over the last 7 years. So I felt it was a good time to take a look at how we could do a therapeutic heavy metal and chemical detoxification and see how successful we could be with this. We know that toxins are a huge issue. We know that 1 in 4 children nationally are exposed to unhealthy levels of mercury in America. 1 in 6 kids have developmental delays or learning issues in America. We know that children under 5 bear the burden of environmental factors more intensely than kids above 5 or adults. And we also know that 80% of all chronic health concerns are associated with heavy metal toxicity. So this isn't a new thing. However, we don't really look at what is the hidden etiology or the hidden causal factor in symptoms we see today, because heavy metals and chemicals, they are tasteless, odorless, and they are hard to see. They're sometimes nanoparticles. They're sprayed in the air. They're sprayed on plants. They are used as pesticides. They're even sprayed on kids' clothing as fire retardants. So how can we deal with something or address something that we can't see? So I really wanted to take on looking at these kids with these issues and putting them through systemic heavy metal and chemical detoxification and measuring their improvements. Could we do it? Would there be a difference in the impact on either their ATEC results or porphyrins between the different detoxification groups? If so, what would that difference be? And does dose matter? We're always looking at what's a great dose. Does half-life matter? Could we mitigate a detox reaction with adrenal support? And how could we make an effective detoxification protocol for parents with no meltdowns by either the kids or the parents? So that was also a very big impetus in wanting to do this study, is how could we do it so that both parents and the kids could be fully compliant and actually enjoy the process? Could that even be possible? So the testing we utilized was urinary porphyrin testing and the ATEC. So the urinary porphyrin profile is associated with high levels of different environmental toxic exposure. It's an enzyme that is produced, a porphyrin, in the kidneys when those specific metals or toxins are present. And it's the body's way of binding to them and removing them. It's a perfectly normal process. And it's a process that is done without any kind of provocation agent. So we're looking at what is actually being excreted. The autism treatment evaluation checklist is something that is done by a parent, a teacher, or a caretaker that's super close to the child, because we're going to look and have them determine levels of speech, language, and communication, their social ability, their sensory cognitive awareness, and their health and physical behavior. So all children had a porphyrin and an ATEC performed, both baseline and then follow-up in 6 weeks. These are our study groups, ages 2 to 14 years old, with 4 groups. We had Group A with 9 participants on adrenal support, liver support, NDF+. Group B, 7 participants on adrenal support, liver support, and NDF. Group C, 6 participants on Loving Energy, Liver Life, NDF+, and NDF. And then Group D is our control group of 11 participants on Liver Life and Chlorella. So the study dosage and weight, I had gone over. It's pretty standard, 1 dropper or 0.8 ml per dropper, two times a day. And criteria for the study was that the bowels had to be moving daily. Our recommendation was 1 to 3 times a day prior to and during detox. That we did have 2 participants that needed help with castor oil. One needed castor oil, the other used oxy powder. They were encouraged to drink plenty of water with fresh squeezed lemon in it daily. We did not allow for a detox reaction. So this occurred in 3 out of the 33 participants, and this meant that more toxins were being mobilized than the elimination organs could comfortably excrete. We made sure that the bowels were moving daily, and we increased those 3 kids' Loving Energy intake by 1 to 2 droppers per day. So we addressed this by addressing adrenal stress. Their diet stayed the same, so however they began the study, they stayed on that same diet. There were no diet changes allowed during the 6-week period. However, we did not regulate that the diet was of any sort of specific type of diet. So this was not a mandatory GF-CF diet, for example. These children were on foods that they normally ate every day. No other detoxifiers were allowed during the 6-week study either. So getting into the groups here and the results, we're going to just hit it hard here, is Group A was our NDF Plus group. And what we can see here is that this group shows the overall need for more detoxification, that there's multiple environmental pollutants still being excreted. So this was something that was interesting for us in the porphyrin testing, which typically it's said that it measures body burden. However, we saw in our study that we could change and shift the results due to the detoxifier used. So in these kids, we can see that the mercury, arsenic, the hexachlorobenzene dioxin group, or the uroporphyrins, that percent of change actually increased. So we saw an increase in excretion of those uroporphyrins in this 6-week period. We saw an increase of the arsenic and the organotoxins as well, and on down the group. Now the total precoporphyrins, or the mercury group, did decrease by 13%. In the heme biosynthesis, the precoporphyrins over the uroporphyrins actually decreased, which is fantastic because heme biosynthesis is related to mitochondrial function. And their mitochondrial function was inflamed, so this showed a decrease in that. In this group, this is still Group A, we're now looking at the corresponding ATEC results to the porphyrins. So the porphyrins, we were seeing the pre and post urinary expression of different porphyrins. The ATEC is the test that was done by a parent or close caregiver or their practitioner. So 8 out of the 9 participants in this group improved on their ATECs. The total overall improvement in 6 weeks was 25%. The kids improved in these areas specifically by 5% speech, social ability, 42% improvement. The sensory cognitive awareness improved in this group by 27%, health and physical behavior by 25%. So the way that these graphs work here, these pie graphs, is when we started with this group, we had 22% of the participants in the severe range on their ATEC scores. In 6 weeks, you can see that we no longer had any child in the severe range, and that our moderate section, or kids that were in the moderate range, had increased to 67%. So essentially saying that the severe kids went down into the moderate range. Also, the mild range increased. So the mild range went from 22% to 33%. Again, showing a really nice shift to improvement in ATECs overall. Group B, this is our group that was on NDF as the detoxifier. And we can see that with this group, the overall decrease is more pronounced of multiple environmental pollutants. However, the arsenic or the organotoxins increased. So this could be a current exposure or a latent stored toxin, and this particular group would still need more detox of the protocol, detoxification protocol. But you can see a very nice decrease in 6 weeks of 20% of the uroporphyrins, and on down the mercury total precoporphyrins by 23%. Now in this group, we see that there was a little pressure put on the heme biosynthesis. So this shows that this value actually increased. So looking at NDF, what we know historically, NDF is more of a physical detoxifier. It's our higher performing detoxification agent. NDF Plus has our additional ingredients that are fermented that support kidney and liver drainage, and have a naturally occurring fulvic acid, which helps the cellular potential in kids, so help that energy exchange. So again, correlating to the heme biosynthesis, it makes sense why that group would do better in this area. The ATECs for this group, the Group B NDF group, this we had 5 out of 7 participants improved. The total improvement overall was 18%. This correlates to what we know NDF does versus NDF Plus. Speech improved by 12%, social ability by 17%, cognitive awareness 14%, and health and physical behavior by 26% in 6 weeks. So again, looking at these pie graphs, you can see that at the beginning of this study, we had 43% of our kids were in the moderate range. That went down to 29%. In the mild moderate range, this was rather high for this group of kids. They were at 43% in this range, and that went down to 14%. And then kids in the mild range increased to 57%, which is a really nice improvement. Group C was our combination group of kids taking both NDF and NDF Plus as their detoxifier. This group improved the most by far. These results are statistically relevant, and they are accurate in the 97 percentile. Their p-value shows us that this was not a fluke, that it's a repeatable, accurate representation of what actually occurred. So using both NDF and NDF Plus, it increased the removal of environmental toxins far more quickly, as seen in the porphyrin tests, while improving neurological behavior issues at the same time. So we see a very quick, fast decrease in 6 weeks of the uroporphyrins, the mercury, arsenic, dioxin, hexachlorobenzene, and the arsenic organotoxins. Each group was very impressive. The mercury, arsenic, lead, PVC, PVB, the coproporphyrin 3 group decreased by 43%. So all of these percentage decrease were seen to correlate as well with the ATEC. So the ATEC in Group C, the NDF plus NDF group, 5 out of 6 participants improved. The total overall improvement was 23%. We saw speech improve by 6%, social ability by 35%, the sensory cognitive awareness by 17%, and the physical health behavior by 32%. So you can see that it really is a nice, we see that adding in the NDF plus to the NDF really improved the cognitive awareness and the overall, the social ability and the physical behavior aspect in this group. So we know that traditionally our kids that are on NDF plus that need that tend to become more social as those toxins are moving down and out of the body. In this group, we had 33% of those kids were in the severe range. At the end of 6 weeks, they had gone down to 17%. Our moderate range opened up from a 50% and went down to 33%. And our mild to moderate range at the end actually went to 50%. So we saw them moving around the dial here and improving as we went. Group D was our chlorella tincture and control group. You can see that the change or the shifts were very mild. There was nothing outstanding to report. We actually, though, I would say that what is interesting here is that the heme biosynthesis did decrease by 8%. These percentages are, we do know that chlorella is a wonderful superfood. However, this is not a micronized chlorella that we do have in NDF and NDF plus. So you can see the significant difference in having a micronized chlorella. And also there's a distinct difference that NDF and NDF plus have a host of 12 different probiotics, as well as NDF plus having our fermented herb blend in there as well. So at the beginning, we had no one on either the severe range or the mild range in this group. All of the kids in this group were either moderate or mildly moderate for the entire group. And the chlorella tincture did do something because it moved some of those mild, moderate kids into the mild range. So, and this was a tincture that I had made up here in our lab of chlorella. It was not a cell wall broken chlorella powder added to a tincture blend that was 18% alcohol by volume. So mostly water, reverse osmosis water in that blend in the chlorella. But we used the 18% alcohol as a preservative. So it did not need to be refrigerated. These kids did see some improvement in speech, social ability, their cognitive awareness, and their health and physical behavior. It was a modest 11% improvement. So we went through this, why are NDF and NDF plus so effective? We've broken down the cell wall. These are micrographs of our micronization process. The chlorella tincture group had a chlorella like you're seeing in the very top left micrograph. That is a mother diatom of chlorella with all of the cell walls intact. Our mid-micronization is the micrograph on the right middle, and you can see that the cell wall has been broken and released all of the smaller nuclei inside the diatom. This is where the mobilizing and binding agents are. 42% of the cell wall of chlorella is made up of different types of sponge material. We want to break that down to very small particle sizes because it is extremely hard to break through that cell wall. And that's what you're seeing on the bottom left micrograph. You're seeing completely decimated cell wall broken chlorella. We know the half-life of NDF and NDF plus is 2 hours. This is a test that we did only on NDF. We've since followed it up with NDF plus as well. This is done with the Schwermetall heavy metal test from Germany. The first line represents the gray is a normal urination from a gentleman 25 years old, never had an amalgam filling in his mouth, had just left the military, was a captain in the Army, had worked in the nuclear armament area, had to wear a suit and mask at all times. So we weren't expecting to see much. Very healthy gentleman. In the first morning urine, he was excreting 2.5 parts per million of mixed heavy metals on his own. You can see by the third urination in the day, however, all excretion of heavy metals had stopped. The next morning, we gave him a bolus dose of NDF, and his very first urination after that dose increased excretion of mixed heavy metals by 10 parts per million. He continued to excrete mixed heavy metals throughout the day, even until his fifth urination of the day. He was still excreting up to 2.5 parts per million of mixed heavy metals. So here are some case studies that I'd like to share with you. Some of them are very moving. We, saw some incredible increased range of kids being social where they had never been social in particular ways with their parents before. This boy, 14 years old, had never done in his lifetime any type of heavy metal and chemical detoxification. His mother was told that it was hard and that it would be very uncomfortable for her son. Her son was self-injurious. He had robotic movements. His mom described him as looks broken with his eyes and his body language. He could be violent with her, bruising her. He had severe OCD and unstable, escalating behaviors that would waver from violent to sitting quietly, watching a movie by himself, for example. The improvements seen during the study were an increase in eye contact with his mom. She is a single mom, sole caretaker. More meaningful conversations. They actually sat and watched movies during this study together, and he would talk with his mom about them. His muscles relaxed. He decreased in his excessive eating. He was less obsessive with his compulsive behaviors. He was much more loving and interactive. He even requested to take walks on his own and was cooking by himself, which he'd never done before. And a significant reduction in self-injurious behaviors. His ATEC improved by 75% in the 6-week study. His porphyrin analysis was he had a decrease of total porphyrins by 39%. His pre-co-porphyrins by 51% decreased, and his heme biosynthesis improved by 54%. So again, correlating the behavior to what we see with these studies is really always just, so reassuring to see that we're on the right track. For mom, what she experienced was a closeness with her son that she'd never had before, and she was just completely surprised that heavy metal and chemical detoxification could be easy. She kept waiting, she said, for something to go wrong or something to be hard. So that was really delightful for us to hear this from her. This boy was really interesting because he came to us that he had done his original porphyrin test with Generation Rescue with a hair analysis. So we followed up and did a hair analysis at the end, as well as his porphyrin and ATEC results. We repeated the hair analysis test, and the hair analysis correlated to the porphyrin analysis. We saw decreases in aluminum, antimony, bismuth, cadmium, lead, and nickel, some of them by very significant degrees. Another child was 22 months old at the beginning of this study, 22 pounds. His total porphyrins were 450, which was higher than any other participant in the study. He had low percentile for height and weight. He had low growth hormone. He had developmental delays and speech delays. His ATEC, it's interesting to note that his issues in the study upon entry were not as high as, say, the boy before him at 14. And seeing the ATEC overall improvement of 14% for me explained that difference, or something to consider, I should say. This child's porphyrin analysis, the total porphyrins improved or decreased by 42%. The total pre-co-pro porphyrins decreased by 46%, or that's the improvement. And the heptacarboxyl porphyrins improved by 86%. This boy, his mom said his growth hormones normalized, he had more speech, he had better speech. So the words he was already using improved, his sentences increased. This boy was 5 years old and had speech delays, hand flapping, unable to socialize, chronic constipation, unable to respond to requests. He was a toe walker and covered his ears with loud noises and sounds. So the ATEC was very impressive with this boy. We saw 60% improvement, and also an improvement in his porphyrins improving and decreasing, and about somewhere between 41 and 69% overall in different areas. His constipation resolved. His eye contact became perfect. He responded when others initiated interaction, which had not been happening. He was more social and tolerant of other kids by the end of this study, and his toe walking had significantly decreased. Hand clapping decreased as well, and his speech improved. So I wanted to just share with you a little bit. This was actually part of the presentation that we shared with parents so that they could understand what each of these do and did. And this was at the Autism Education Summit that I presented this last year. And helping the kids deal with stress of both the heavy metals being present and while they left the body was instrumental in being able to have the compliance that we did. There were no issues with not feeling well or not wanting to take the supplements. They were put into juice or water, and all kids had a totally fine response to taking them. None of them balked at taking them. Liver Life improves the natural detoxification abilities. We know this from another ATEC study we did, as well as organic acid testing and liver enzyme testing we've done pre and post with Liver Life. It enhances metabolism, improves nutrient absorption, decreases frustration, anger, and anxiety. The liver is considered in traditional Chinese medicine to be the organ, that system that holds those emotions. When it's congested and not moving toxins down efficiently, we see those emotions back up and become expressed. So we saw that improve in these kids as well. This helps promote restful sleep and balances hormones. We had no kids with any kind of skin irritations, head pain, or increased sensory issues. So I believe this was a factor in having those be resolved during this study as well. NDF Plus gently removes toxins and helps restore the cellular energy. It improves memory, eliminates brain fog, supports cognitive function. In real-time EEG studies that we've done, we see that it improves beta and theta waves in 5 to 113 minutes. Those are the two brain functions that support concentration and ability to focus. NDF Plus enhances clarity and concentration and helps with energy and focus as well. At times when histamines are high in the environment, this is a nice adjunct with loving energy. Taking the two of those together have balanced out histamine responses to either environmental irritants or organic issues going on around springtime. We went into deeper detoxification with these kids with NDF. So this formula removes more toxins at a faster rate. It improves memory and immune function, increases clarity, concentration, and focus, and it helps us reach the end point of detox more quickly, and it gives more sustained results. Support for recovery. So in kids with chronic issues or significant imbalances, it takes time to shift the body's terrain. We took a snapshot of 6 weeks with these kids to see what we could do. What kind of dramatic shift could we make in 6 weeks? Now, I do need to back this up a little bit. We did this for 14 years in clinical practice, so I had experience with mitigating detox reactions and looking at the methods of detoxification in those organs of elimination. But I had never done this with a group of parents before that were not under direct care coming into our offices. So this was really exciting for me to see that we could get such great results and compliance with giving parents some tools like we did, and for them to see the results that were there. When there is a protocol in place and symptoms improved, it's not a time to stop. As I shared in the first group, we could see that those kids still had more detoxification that it would be beneficial to do. The most time, or the longest time that I've ever seen someone need to get down below 3 parts per million in any of the heavy metals, which is what doctors' data recommends as being normal in the body, was 2 years. Generally speaking, we've seen people anywhere from 90 parts per million up to 450 parts per million of different heavy metals. And when we bring people below 17 parts per million, statistically, that's where we really see those results improve. However, that was in our adult population. So it was interesting for me to see in this study that we were seeing an improvement in both ATEX and porphyrins in positive report from the parents, even with a 10 or 15% improvement in decrease in those heavy metals. So that was very interesting. I'd like to look at that more thoroughly later on, which is kids improving much faster with smaller percentage change than an adult. It was really important that the kids maintain a healthy eating style. The intake of toxins needs to be substantially decreased when going through something like a heavy metal detoxification. You might see a jump if a child eats, say, like a swordfish or, a fish or a food that, may have some high heavy metals in it. You may see a surprise in the next lab test. So making sure that they are on a consistent, clean diet with eating low heavy metal and chemical foods is rather important if you really are using measurement tools. I mean, it's important overall. However, these tests cost parents money. And so I always like to say it's very important that you keep things the way that you have them without any drastic increases in any type of food, because it will oftentimes show up on the lab results, and we want to see the actual improvements as close as possible that we're making. Things will come up. There's certain triggers that can make previous symptoms resurface. So allergy season, we've seen kids, quote, get aggravations or regressions, changes in diet, antibiotic use, or a new increase in stress. All of those have been triggers in the past of where we will see an increase in some type of behavior. And what was working before may not be enough. So check to see if your client or patient is being consistent with remedies, or there may be a need for an increase in the dose or even a change in the remedy. We're not always on the same thing for long periods of time. As the body shifts, we want to be able to shift the remedies as needed. So sometimes there will need to be a shift, and being open to that is important. So that's the end of our presentation. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those for you now. Also, you can reach out to myself, Tammy, or Carrie. We give really great practitioner support. You can set up a time with us, a day and time, and we're happy to speak with you. All of us can be reached at the BIORAY offices, and we do have direct lines. So please let us know. Send us an email at info@bioray.com, and we will get back to you and set up a time for us to go over any kind of questions that you have. Thank you so much for your time, and everybody have a great day.